Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how to make this fabulous Christmas tree LED sign. The materials that I've used are an A4 sized sheet of acrylic. This is 3mm thick, which is about 1/8 of an inch. A 12-volt LED strip light tape. You can buy these in various lengths and they consist of a flexible PCB with self-adhesive tape on the back. The tape consists of multiple sections, each containing 3 LEDs and a resistor. You can cut the tape to length at the marked points and solder on some connecting wires, or buy them already cut to length with the wires attached. I have also used some self-adhesive foil tape and finally 3 pieces of square planed wood. The design for the Christmas tree came from a children's stencil book, but if you search online there's lots available. To engrave the design on the acrylic sheet I used a cheap Dremel engraver tool. You can use a rotary tool, but the engraver is much easier to use. The base is quite simple. It consists of 3 pieces of wood glued together to form a slot with the LED strip in the centre. So first of all, cut the 3 pieces of wood to the same width as the acrylic sheet, which is 210mm. Next I used a router to remove the edge from the 2 side pieces. The reason for doing so is that the LED tape is wider than the acrylic sheet and this allows for some clearance. But if you don't have a router, just sand the edges away. To improve the finish, I sanded the wood with 240 grit sandpaper. Then I applied wood glue to the base of one of the side pieces, stuck it onto the base and clamped it into place using a second piece of wood for stability. Wiped away the excess glue and left it to dry. Once it was dry, I taped some foil tape to the wood to help reflect light in the base. And again on the other side. I removed the backing from the LED tape and stuck it in place on the base. Then using the acrylic sheet as a spacer, I glued the other side to the base, using clamps to hold it firmly in place while it dries. Once it was dry, I removed the acrylic sheet and gave it a clear coat of varnish. Once the varnish was dried, I soldered on a 9-volt battery connector to the LED strip lead. The LED strips work from 9 volts to 12 volts and they are much brighter at 12 volts, so you may wish to use a 12-volt power supply instead. To insulate the connections, I've used some heat shrink tubing. And finally, a quick test to make sure everything's working. So that's the base completed, and now we're going to move on to engraving the acrylic sheet. I've used a children's stencil for the design. Because it's in book format, I've decided to trace directly onto paper, but there's no reason why you couldn't use the stencil to engrave directly onto the acrylic sheet. One thing to be aware of is the image is flipped because we're actually engraving onto the reverse side of the acrylic sheet. So the next step is to tape the design to the protective covering on the back of the acrylic sheet. To stop the acrylic sheet moving around while I'm working on it, I'm using this non-slip mat, and I'm also going to tape an LED light strip to the base of the sheet to highlight the engraving. If you don't have an additional light strip, then you can just use the base you've already made. Now we're ready for engraving. So I've set my engraving tool to setting 2, and the approach that I've used is to start from the top and peel back the protective layer from the acrylic sheet and work downwards. The LED light highlights where you're engraving, making it much easier. For the rest of the engraving, I've sped the film up to 16 times. Once the engraving was finished, I removed the protective film from the acrylic sheet. And then inserted the engraved acrylic sheet into the base. So that's it, finished. I'm really happy with it. So please don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching.